My name is Mike Sterling, whose name has been changed. I am an avid fisherman. The feeling of waiting, reeling in the line, and fighting with a big fish always gives me a special thrill. I have two close friends, Chris and David, whose names have been changed, and they also share this passion with me. On a free Sunday at the end of summer in 2021, we decided to go on an overnight fishing trip. We wanted to challenge ourselves with bigger fish, and the feeling of fishing in the silence of the night always has a unique appeal. We chose a rather remote location, a small secluded lake in rural Wisconsin. This lake was known for having many fish, but also for rumors about its isolation and sometimes strange stories. Although I didn't fully believe those rumors, the remoteness of the place carried a bit of mystery and fascination. We drove to the lake in the afternoon. As the sun began to set, the air there was very fresh, but also very quiet. As night fell, that silence became more terrifying. There was only the chirping of insects and the faint rustling of the wind through the trees. We set up a small camp, built a campfire to warm ourselves and provide light. The flickering fire created dancing shadows around us. We prepared our fishing gear, baited our hooks, and cast our lines into the water. Early in the evening, things went quite smoothly. We talked, laughed, enjoying the late-night atmosphere. The bell signaling a bite occasionally rang, bringing excitement. However, something strange began to happen. Several times, we got strong bites, feeling like we had hooked a big fish. We tried our best to pull the rod up, fighting with the fish underwater. But each time, just when it felt like we were about to pull the fish out of the water, the line suddenly went slack. The fish had gotten away. Not just once, but multiple times in a row. I felt frustrated. I checked the hook. The hook wasn't broken, wasn't dull. I switched to a different hook, a different line, a different lure, but the situation didn't change. Every time there was a strong bite. When I was close to landing the fish, it would get away. I started to suspect, perhaps, it wasn't the gear, bait for the ghost, although I didn't think of that at the time. That puzzling occurrence planted a seed of unease. The night fishing trip on the old lake had begun with strange and suspicious events. And we didn't know that those strange events were just the beginning of a horrifying night. The strange occurrences of repeatedly losing fish inexplicably frustrated and puzzled me and my friends. Although we tried to find a logical explanation, like clever fish or dull hooks, the repeated occurrences made us feel like something was not normal. We sat by the campfire, looking at the flickering flames. The fire illuminated a small area around us, while beyond was the thick darkness of the night and the forest. The chirping of insects still echoed. The wind gently rustled through the leaves. The lake in front of us was quiet, with only the sound of small waves lapping against the shore. Time slowly approached midnight. The air became a little colder. We sat closer to the fire. The silence of the night seemed deeper, more terrifying. Then, as we were chatting about memorable fishing trips, suddenly, we heard a sound from the direction of the lake, the sound of water being stirred vigorously, splashing, as if someone was swimming in the lake. We all stopped talking simultaneously, listening. The splashing sound was very clear. It wasn't the sound of a fish splashing its tail. It sounded like the strokes of someone's arms and legs. But who would be swimming in the lake at this hour, in the middle of the deserted night? We looked at each other, our faces full of confusion and fear. The splashing continued, coming from somewhere out in the darkness. On the surface of the lake, Chris took a flashlight from his backpack. A very powerful flashlight. See who it is? Chris said softly, his voice slightly trembling. Chris, and David, all directed our flashlights towards the sound. The flashlight beams swept across the dark surface of the lake. The light shone down on the water, creating bright circles on the pitch-black surface. We shined our flashlights all over that area, trying to find out who was swimming. The splashing sound still echoed, seemingly moving around. Our hearts pounded in our chests. Who was out there? Was it someone in trouble? Then, David's flashlight suddenly stopped at one spot on the lake. "Oh, my God," David muttered. We all directed our flashlights towards that spot. And then, we saw something floating on the water, the shape of a person, a body. The haunting from the dark water had begun to take shape. The echoes from the lake bed were no longer just sounds. We stared at the body floating on the lake's surface under the flashlight beam. Our hearts pounded in our chests, gasping for breath in the eerie silence of the night. It was the shape of a woman. She was lying face down on the water, her face submerged. Her long hair floated around her, looking soaking wet and matted. Her clothes also looked completely waterlogged, clinging tightly to her body. The body looked pale and swollen, as if it had been in the water for a long time. We stood there, shocked, speechless. The body floated on the lake, not far from where we were. Was this real, or were we mistaken? The initial fear was mixed with a bit of panic and the need to do something. Call the police," I stammered, my voice trembling. "Yes, right," Chris said, his voice also shaking. "We had to call the police." We quickly took out our phones. But in this remote area, the phone signal was very weak. "No signal," David said, his face pale. We looked at each other. What should we do now? Leave the body there? Let's get closer and see," David said softly, his voice tense. "See if it's real, or maybe help somehow." Despite the fear, curiosity and the desire to confirm what we saw motivated us. Together, holding flashlights, we carefully walked towards the edge of the lake. The lake's surface was still quiet, with only the body still floating there, under our flashlights. When we reached the water's edge, about a few meters from the body, something terrifying happened. The woman's body suddenly sank into the water. Not slowly, but sank very quickly, as if someone was pulling it down from below. In just an instant, the body had completely disappeared beneath the black water of the lake. We froze, staring at the spot where the body had just been floating. Only small ripples remained on the surface. We shined our flashlights all over the lake, trying to find the body again, but saw nothing. It had disappeared completely. What shouldn't float had sunk. We stood there, looking at each other, our faces full of horror and confusion. A terrifying truth suddenly dawned on David. That wasn't a dead body," David said softly, his voice full of dread. Chris and I looked at David. "That was a ghost," David said, his eyes wide with fear. "The ghost of a woman who drowned." Hearing this, I felt utterly terrified. A ghost. We had seen a ghost. The body on the lake surface wasn't a real dead body. It was the manifestation of a spirit. And that spirit had sunk when we got close. We knew we were in a dangerous place. The ghost of the drowned woman was in this lake. The moment David said that we had seen the ghost of the drowned woman, a terrifying truth hit us, sending our fear levels through the roof. It wasn't a dead body. It was a spirit. We stood there, staring at the dark surface of the lake where the body, or ghost, had just sunk. The silence of the night suddenly became more terrifying than ever. The chirping of insects, the rustling of wind through the leaves. All sounded like eerie whispers. Go now, David said softly, his voice filled with extreme tension. We have to go now. This place is very dangerous. David's face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. He didn't need to explain much. All three of us felt it. The feeling of a malevolent presence in the lake, staring at us from beneath the black water. Fear was stronger than any curiosity or desire to stay. Survival instinct had taken over. Yes, I said, my voice trembling. Let's go, right now. We quickly rushed towards the campsite. Our hands shaking, we frantically packed up our fishing rods. The sound of the lines, the rods hitting each other, sounded very loud in the eerie silence of the night. Everything was done in a hurry, haphazardly. We didn't care about losing equipment. The only thing we wanted was to get out of there as fast as possible. We packed up our gear as quickly as we could, throwing everything into our backpacks, not caring about packing neatly. The flickering campfire illuminated our fearful faces. As we were doing that, I kept feeling as if someone was watching us from the direction of the lake. The feeling was very strong, as if some gaze was following our every move. I didn't dare look towards the lake. I just focused on packing up. Chris and David also seemed to feel it. They did everything in a hurry, and occasionally glanced towards the lake with fearful looks. After packing up our gear haphazardly, we quickly put out the campfire. Only the faint moonlight shone down. We, three grown men, stood there, in the darkness, trembling with fear. Let's go, David said, his voice almost a shout. We quickly left the campsite area. We didn't walk normally. We ran along the trail leading away from the lake. The sound of our footsteps crunching on dry leaves was very loud in the silence of the night. We ran until we were gasping for breath, our hearts pounding as if they would burst. Didn't turn back to look. Didn't say a word, just ran. Pure terror had taken over us. We ran until we reached the car parked on the main road outside. Packing up and running, the night fishing trip had turned into a flight from the supernatural. We had seen a ghost, and that ghost had terrified us completely. We drove away from the secluded lake area in terrifying silence. No one said a word the entire way back. There was only the sound of the car engine and our heavy breathing. All three of our faces were pale with fear. When we got home, it was almost morning. We went our separate ways, but knew that none of us could sleep. The days that followed were a real nightmare for me. The image of the body, or ghost, floating on the lake. The pale face, the empty eyes, haunted me constantly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that scene again. I heard the splashing, the sound of the water being stirred violently, and then the sight of the body sinking unnaturally. The fear from the lake bed had followed me home. I couldn't sleep. Every night, I would lie awake in bed, staring at the ceiling in the darkness. Just a small sound in the house would startle me. I felt as if the ghost of the drowned woman was still somewhere nearby, still watching me. When I took a shower, looking at the running water, I would see the image of the body floating up. When I looked in the mirror, sometimes, I would see the image of a pale face, with matted hair, right behind me. I knew that these things weren't my imagination. What we had seen that night was real. I tried to talk to Chris and David about what I was going through, about my haunting. They also admitted that they were very scared and couldn't sleep. Chris said he still heard the sound of water being stirred in his head. David said he felt like someone was pulling him underwater. We were all haunted by that fateful night fishing trip. The fear from the lake bed wasn't just a fleeting feeling. It was something deeper, something that had taken root in our minds. We didn't dare to mention the name of that lake anymore. We didn't dare to go night fishing anymore. Even just looking at water made me feel uneasy. I tried to go back to normal life. Going to work, meeting friends. But inside, I knew I had changed. A part of me had been affected by the horror we had witnessed. The haunting nightmare tormented me every night. Every day. The fear from the lake bed had become my unwelcome companion. And I knew that as long as I remembered that night, I would never completely escape this haunting. The ghost of the drowned woman was still there. In the lake, and in our minds. The fateful night fishing trip ended with a terrifying escape from the ghost of the drowned woman. But that fear didn't end when we left the lake. It followed us. I, Chris, and David were all heavily haunted by what we had witnessed. The image of the body, ghost, floating on the lake and the sight of it sinking unnaturally were constantly in our minds. We didn't dare to talk about this with anyone else. We were afraid they wouldn't believe us, or would think we were crazy due to extreme fear. We tried to find out more about the history of that lake online. We searched for drownings, disappearances in that area. We found some notable information about drownings that had occurred in this lake in the past. Some with unclear explanations. There was a story about a young woman who drowned in this lake many years ago. But the details of her death were very vague. Perhaps that was the ghost we had seen. The fear from the lake bed has changed our lives. We are no longer interested in fishing, especially night fishing. We avoid lakes, rivers, and any bodies of water at night. My sleep is still not good. I often have nightmares about the lake, about the dark water, and about the ghost of the woman with the pale face and empty eyes. Sometimes, when I'm home alone, I suddenly hear strange noises from somewhere. The faint sound of water being stirred, or faint groaning, although I know there can't be water in the house. Those sounds send shivers down my spine. I feel as if that ghost is still somewhere close to us. Still watching us. Perhaps it followed us home from the lake. Haunted by the lake bed has become an inseparable part of my life. We don't know why the ghost appeared, why it targeted us. Perhaps our fishing there disturbed her rest? Perhaps she is angry for some reason? Those questions still have no answers. We had seen something horrifying, something supernatural, and it has changed us forever. I know I will never forget that night. The fateful night fishing trip at the secluded lake. The night we faced the ghost of the drowned woman. Whispers from the black water will forever haunt me. And I know that the truth about what lurks beneath the dark waters is still vast and very terrifying. Our story is a warning. Be careful with secluded places, especially bodies of water at night. You never know what is hiding beneath the surface. If you enjoyed these true horror stories, or stories based on accounts and unexplained mysteries, like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on the channel to follow our latest videos. We will bring you more terrifying and haunting stories. Thank you for listening.